Good morning. Welcome to the Connector Podcast. I'm Jim Torr, CEO and Executive Creative Director at CI Design. I do this podcast called the Connector Podcast to celebrate folks that I'm connected to, but are connectors in their own right. And I have with me today my privilege, Heather Vaughn, Executive Director of Marketing at CI Design. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
I'm looking forward to getting into some questions so that you can get to know Heather. I've known Heather coming up on 3 years. It's been great. I'm still discovering some things. But before we get into everything on a professional track, Heather, you know how I start these. What's in your music playlist?
I am stuck in just things from my adolescence, like late 90s, early 2000s. I'm still listening to all the ladies that were on the Lilith Fair circuit. I'm still listening to a band I was obsessed with in the early 2000s called Guster. But yeah, I vacillate a lot. Like sometimes I'll just pull out, something 80s minded or something even further back. Like I really got into a Fleetwood Mac phase a couple months ago. So it's all over the place.
That's really good stuff. Yeah, I like to go back and go deep on something that maybe I'll listen to the hits, but I want to go deeper. Fleetwood Mac would be a great one there. Okay. Also, follow-up question. What was the last live concert you were at?
The last live concert I got to go to was Guns N' Roses.
What?
With you. And it was a blast.
We did have a blast. Oh my goodness. Okay, folks. Yeah, Heather and Jim and Andrea, my wife, and I went to Guns N' Roses with Wolfgang opening, Wolfgang Van Halen, laid down a wall of sound.
He did.
Super impressive. What was any just visually, audibly, what do you remember the most of the show that night?
I mean, I think that's just it. Like growing up, because I'm a little seasoned, like shows were not as integrated always back in the day, right? So like what they're doing with visuals. I mean, there was a point where my husband Jim and I were just trying to figure out like, is that graphic over there? And just to take it all in at once was really, really cool.
Visually, that screen never stopped. That was pretty cool. I have to just say, because I am just beaming about one thing, to go to Guns N' Roses and see Duff and Axl and Slash, Dizzy, great, right? And I never saw them the first time around.
Yeah, never
I'm such a hard rock kind of guy, and that's a band that I missed. But their other guitarist, Richard Fortus, just blew my mind. And I'm saying that just to say it, I guess. It's just like when I look back on the night, I'm like, how does that person integrate and actually elevate so the others could do what they did? That was fascinating.
I would agree. And I also wish I knew her name, but the woman on the keys, I could not stop watching her just because she was so into what she was doing. And I was like, that is why you go to live shows, just to see people do what they do.
Yeah, and vocally.
Yeah.
So, and let's say, too, the drummer was probably, and I've loved the string of drummers, probably my favorite in that seat. Awesome show. Great to reminisce
great
with you on
sure.
that. Okay, we're not done with music yet.
Okay.
Because I know something about your career, and this is where I want to go anyway. You're a marketing director and have been in a couple different seats, okay? And we're going to get into that. But that's not necessarily the path you had set out on. So tell us about the music connection and where you thought you were headed.
I thought that I was going to be a music teacher, and I went to school for it. I finished a complete degree. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for your support. And there was a great experience learning how to be a music teacher. I just didn't have the passion for it that I thought I was going to have for it. There was a certain point in my senior year of school, I was home on summer break, and I was teaching water aerobics at the time, which is a super long story, but a lot of the ladies in my class were teachers, and they were like, oh, you're going to love it. You're going to do so great. And I was like, am I? Nevertheless, I did it, and it was a great experience, but realized it wasn't going to be for me long term. I really love teaching students one-on-one and connecting and like seeing a kid like just get something when they practice and put in the time. So I taught a lot of private lessons, but going to teach like in a school setting, I knew wasn't going to be for me. So meandered my way through a couple of different jobs and landed at a marketing firm that used to be down the street from where we are now, as their front desk person. Honestly, like I was the office manager.
That's right.
And just kind of dove in, understood the business, moved into a project management role, moved into an account role, and just kind of fell in love with marketing and all the possibilities that came along with it.
Yeah. You remind me, that's so good. And I love continuing to learn more and more about you. Your LinkedIn, and I'm not reading it verbatim, but I took a note somewhere where you said you love to solve for X. Okay.
Yes.
We'll talk about that. And that you're a geek on all things strategy, content, calendars, and automation. And so some of those things awoke in you really through the lens of the business at the front desk there. Tell me what happens next. What?
Yeah, I mean, they trusted me with a lot of things, like to help with sales presentations. So I got a lot of exposure to seeing how the business was run. I got to proof, web scripts for learning and development modules and proof video scripts. So I got to learn like all these different facets of the business pretty quickly. And when there was an opening on the project management side, somebody was like, hey, Heather's organized. Heather can turn chaos into order. We should see if she wants to go for this. And I was terrified because I feel like once you're inside a place and they know you a little bit, it's much more like risky than when you just go in blind, like to a cold interview, because it might work, it might not. So I felt like I had more at stake, but I went for it and it worked out. And then continued to just like get more and more exposure to how websites are built, how videos are made, all the things. And because we were scrappy and small, had to try a bunch of different things. So had to learn how to write a video script, had to learn how to like put together this would be embarrassing for like our team to see, but like a wireframe in a PowerPoint slide just to get an idea across.
Yeah. And you were trying the things, it sounds like, and filling in there's pieces here.
Yes.
And literally, like, did you do the wireframe?
Yeah.
And
there were times.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. And then you have a taste for it. Later on, you're working with somebody that's their job, but you have a little stake in it. Yeah. Okay. So how many years about in that role? And then it evolved, like probably your title changed from.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I was at that agency for about 7 years and, various roles in account and project management. And then I got an opportunity to go client side. And it was one of those things through a connection, through the Business Marketing Association, the local chapter. Somebody that I used to work with was like, hey, this guy's hiring. You should probably talk to him. And it was one of those things where I had a first conversation with him, very similar to how I had a first conversation with you, where I was like, I want to work with that person. And it kind of worked out then and ended up taking a marketing role at Crisis Prevention Institute.
Yeah. Just, not to, be flippant about Crisis Prevention Institute, because crisis feels like a place where, as communicators, we're in often. We're not that PR firm that does, crisis type of marketing, yet everything's urgent. Mm-hmm. And there's nuance and timing to everything. You were dealing there with some heavy type of topics. Nonetheless, what'd you learn there that translates back over to this agency world? Anywhere you want to go with that?
For sure. That was an interesting thing. Like when you grow up on the agency side and then you have a chance to go corporate, you're like, I'm not going to be like my clients where I'm going to be responsive. I'm going to be on top of things. I'm going to be super fast. But then you get inside corporate and priorities change and, product has a new idea, sales has a new need. There's just a lot to still deal with inside of corporate that I finally understood why a client hadn't responded to me for 3 days. But I forged a lot of relationships within CPI with the sales team and really kind of learned what marketing can do to drive the business when they have the right partners, when they're partnering with sales to kind of understand how are we contributing to pipeline, and when they're partnering with product to understand where do we need to go next to deliver what the customer really needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Heather, I get to see it all the time and through the lens of something you brought up. being on the client side, this huge amount of empathy that you bring to the role that we serve. Our clients are often the marketing director that you were. And so you bring such a potent awareness, and then you share that with us and the team. And it's not just like how to make a marketing director client happy. It's what's going on in the world from the client side. So I guess I ended up just telling you that's something I appreciate, right? But could you tell us a little bit about how that framework of that lens that you bring to the table meets collaboration with your team? Because I see it all the time. There's like a lot of participation, a lot of voices that you're able to like really elevate at the table.
For sure. Yeah, I think it comes across in multiple teams, and that's, I think, one of my favorite things about my role here is that I get to be on multiple teams, right? I have my team of practitioners that I oversee and get to coach and work with that do digital strategy, that do content, and kind of get to help editorialize with them like, hey, is this really hitting the audience's needs? Is this going to read well on this medium versus that one? But also with the sales team, right? Like I get to talk with them about like, how does this proposal come across when that client receives it? And is it communicating enough, all of the scope that's going into this? Are they just going to flip to that budget page and look at the price and go, maybe not this time? And just how do we communicate no matter what, but how do we make sure everybody's contributing to that conversation to make it as thoughtful and complete as possible?
Yeah, it's so good. And I can think of all the times, including yesterday, midday, where you raised your hand, had some insights, and came to my last meeting of the day to really round out the picture for our offering with some new insights. And I could have taken the meeting. It may have fallen pretty flat. I don't know. But it was better for your involvement, and you did a lap around your department to get a couple other insights that came. So that when we talk about the collaborative spirit, approach, that's something I just really enjoy about you. Also to say though, I find you just highly creative.
Thanks.
So in our first take, I actually called you executive creative director, my role, but nonetheless, we're all very creative here. Mm-hmm. It's a place, I think, where we celebrate that, whichever seat. But you're born from some creativity, couple places to go to. Let's take a break from the career track a little bit. What do you love to do creatively outside of work?
Outside of work, everything, but really into gardening has become a passion of mine in the last couple of years. And there's a creative art form to that, and getting the soil mix right and getting the color balance right and the sizes right. My husband and I really are into glass fusing, and it's not something that we get to do very often. But that would be like a dream for us someday, to have a kiln in our house and get to like fuse glass. But we've done it mostly on vacation when we go to Door County. There's an awesome place up there where we go, and we've done many pieces that are hanging in our house. Super cool.
Okay, yeah. Continue to learn more about the Heather Vaughn. We've brought up Jim Vaughn a couple times today, your husband. You met agency?
Kind of.
So tell us about
I was working at the other agency at the time, and I met Jim 2 or 3 times before he actually remembers meeting me, but no fault to him. He was dating someone else at the time. He wasn't ready. So, but yeah, I met him actually through my old boss at that agency. She and Jim had worked together at 2 previous jobs. So they knew each other, and the real final time we met was at a Christmas open house at her house. And he was not dating anyone at the time, and he was like, hey, can I get her number? And it worked out. So yeah,
very cool. So as I've gotten to know Jim, it's been wonderful. Tell me about going home to somebody that's in the industry, and what that dynamic is. I know for myself, I'm real glad that there's no crossover in a career, so that conversation can kind of give me a break from the day. But not the case exactly for you two, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those blessings and curses at the same time, because I think, especially during pandemic where we were both like working from home and could overhear each other's phone calls sometimes, and be like, well, you should just tell them this, and maybe you guys should approach it this way. So it's cool to have someone to bounce ideas off of, but it's way too easy to like armchair quarterback when it's not your situation. So, but I appreciate, having someone who's creative in the house, having someone, same thing, he's had a very expansive background in video, marketing, communications. So like, I know if I take something to him, he can help me troubleshoot it, which is cool. But there are also times where I just want to take something to him to like express it, invent it, and maybe workshop it out on my own. So I'll often preface it with like, I don't need you to fix this. I just need you to listen to me.
That's great. That's great on the communication style. A lot of times folks around me, and I know of myself, if somebody's asking me something, I'm going to get in there and do it. But hey, I just like the perspective, and we appreciate Jim. He's consulted us, at least through you.
Yes,
even
he has.
recently. Yeah, and so great thinker, and you guys are dynamic that way. That's awesome.
He has no shortage of ideas, which makes being married to him very fun.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Well, Heather, it's a privilege to get to lead with you day after day, and you came into a culture here that was guided a bit by a leadership consultant that we've had working with us for 5 or 6 years, and it's based on the type of voice that we project, and to identify that mine's different from yours, different from the next person. What's it like on the other side of me? What's it like on the other side of you? So with some of this vocabulary that our audience will pick up on, we don't need to go through it in detail, but can you tell us of your voice and a little bit of your leadership style that was uncovered in this process?
Yeah, I mean, I was really stoked when I came in and learned that this was part of the culture here, because I'd always geeked out. I geek for many things, but geeked out on anything like Myers-Briggs or DISC assessments or anything like that. So I hadn't been exposed to this one, but I was really excited to learn about it, and most excited that we put into practice. Mm-hmm. Like, it's part of the language we use with each other, and it's awesome. So my primary voice is nurturer, and totally made sense when I got the result back, because the main thing is being a champion of people. And I think that's something I've sort of learned maybe from leaders that modeled things I didn't want to emulate, and from others that modeled exactly what I wanted to emulate. And for me, it's all about just letting people be successful and letting them shine.
That's so good. The overlay as Heather came to us is really neat. We had gotten a employee comment of about that era. In fact, I know it to be because it was when we had won our second best workplace in a row, and an anonymous comment that came to us in these results was, CI Design is a place that creates a space for me, that person, space for me to do my job. There's some other words, but I know the impression that it was painting was that we protect for time and sort of clarity, so that somebody can really do their thing. And that was really gratifying. But the nurturer in you, and I see it on display. It's more than just time keeping. It's the emotional state. How you doing? And I know we've spent a lot of time recently saying switching gears.
Yes.
It's not something that we desire to have people spending time going through, start, stop, or this project, that project. And you're attending to that so well for your team.
Thank you.
Can you real time fix it? Not always, but you're communicating with them that you're leading to a better day. And so that'd be one way that I see nurture in action. When you brought up, and you don't have to rat anybody out, of how leadership was modeled for you and how you'd like to do it different, and that same of parenting or different things. We see what we like, we keep those. We see what we don't like, and we don't keep those. Who are some leaders that you've admired in the past that you know you kind of still hear their voice, or even find yourself? Oh, I will once in a while find myself with a mannerism that that's from
Yep.
from that leader.
Yeah, I would say my old boss Julie from Full House, she's still like a voice of reason in the back of my head. And she created within our little ecosystem we had at the time on our account team was she nicknamed us the chicks who get shit done. So like any time that I can get in a mode and just be like taking tasks off my list, I'm like, Julie's in my head and she's like proud right now. And then I would say my chief marketing officer at CPI as well, Marvin, he modeled for me, again, I think a lot around being a nurturer. I'm not sure where he would land on the voices, but, you know, definitely a champion of people, definitely talked about, hey, your role as a leader is to remove obstacles for people so they can be successful. And that is something that, like, at the end of the day, and we all have off days, right? But if I'm, like, too up in my own stuff, I'm like, I haven't taken time out to find out how Amanda's doing or how Rebecca's doing, and I'm going to go do that instead right now because that's my role.
Wow. Yeah, it's so good. It's so gratifying to me too. I rank, you know, high in the nurturer, and then of course connector is my first voice, creative. And I just find it like nurturer necessary. It's like if, you know, if somebody doesn't feel attached to the cause, you know, how long will they you know, be satisfied?
Mm-hmm.
Until they see themselves, I guess maybe better metaphors like, you know, how far out on the branch are they from the family?
Yeah.
And our nurturers, you know, really help show us our purpose and remind us and pull us in. And, you know, I don't think, I'd say this, a nurturer is, it's got feels around it. That's awesome. Your Myers-Briggs is ENFJ, so your feel is very strong. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
ENFJ. I'm ENFP, and so we could dissect that. We won't geek too long on it right now, but because we're so very very close.
Yeah.
In letters there, just the one off. I think we really get each other.
Yes.
And so I feel like we can run. We often get to dovetail around clients, projects, and even teams where it's not a hard and different voice they're hearing, but we're extending that culture piece.
For sure. I think that's also one of the most satisfying parts of being here is just that banter that you and I can do together with clients, and having like pure marketing brain, again, that I've all learned over time. It wasn't, and I may not be the best marketer, but I'm working on it all the time. And to have somebody so purely creatively driven, it just naturally complements so well for people that we round each other out in conversations. And I was fortunate to have a similar collaborative relationship at my last role. So I was craving that when I got here. And when we got into a rhythm, it was really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it too. You are continually learning, and that's evident. So many times, I hope, I would think, I want to just say I know that the clients love to hear of the practice. You know, no, we haven't figured everything out and there isn't one way. I'll often say, like, you know, a doctor has her practice.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, she's going to do some surgeries or she's going to perform some procedures, and we desire the highest form of outcome, a successful outcome, but nonetheless each next step with new science, new research, and so marketing is a practice. And you're super transparent to say, I learned a thing and I want to try it. Where is some of your learning coming from these days? And two, if you feel like touching on, you know, you're out there in the community, you're on some boards and things like that. But of just, you know, extracurriculars, where's Heather spending her time?
For sure. Yeah. I've been a part of the Milwaukee Business Marketing Association, which is now the ANA, American Association of National Advertisers. But the business marketing focused chapter in Milwaukee, which has almost been in Milwaukee for like 100 years. So it's a pretty cool thing. But that's an incredible community of like-minded marketers that just want to, you know, have a network of smart marketers to ask questions to and to stay in touch with. So that's been incredibly rewarding. There's monthly networking events and things like that. I have been on the board for that organization, which then that's an even like tighter knit group of volunteers who are balancing day jobs with this volunteer gig. But, if you're really passionate about your practice, it's worth it, those extra stretch hours you put in. I also listen to a couple different marketing podcasts. One of my can't ever not listen to it in a week is from the Content Marketing Institute. That podcast went away a couple years ago and then it came back. And I was so excited because that was like one of my, these are my guys I got to go to. They talk about everything from business strategy to marketing to media. But yeah, any webinar that lands in my lap that has a great title, I'm probably going to register for it. I might not show up right then, but I probably will check it out later. Mm-hmm. And then even our own team, like I'm constantly asking them, like, what are you reading? What do I need to pay attention to? And we talk about that stuff together because we know we can't get stagnant.
Yeah.
We have to keep learning.
Oh, I love it. It's so rich. And you pull out connections. We often, if we're recruiting or needing to reach out to the network, or I've got a girl, I've got a guy, you'll let us know. It's so rich to have that. It's the Connector podcast, and honestly, what led you to us and how our circle of influence grew a lot by having you. So we love it. Trying to think of a way to close, and maybe really that is it, Heather. Love your path, the what brought you to us. We've just gotten started. You're growing and making us better. I think I'm just going to pull the plug on this with a little fist bump and tell you thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Have a good day, everybody.